Welcome to the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS, where we address vital questions and share unique perspectives from leaders at the intersection of business and technology.
Hello, this is Tanuja Randery, Managing Director of Europe, Middle East and Africa for Amazon Web Services. Welcome to another episode of Executive Insights, our CEO series. In this series, I will be speaking with CEOs from across the EMEA region about what it takes to transform business and society, how they are leveraging data and technology to accelerate growth and innovate, and their insights on topics such as sustainability and addressing the digital skills gap. We will also be providing a glimpse into the personalities behind some of our great leaders of industry. Creativity so often thrives where art and technology meet, and today's guest has built a career at the cutting edge of both. He's a leader who redefines trends rather than follows them. From shaping iconic visual effects projects to founding a next-generation creative studio, his vision has helped transform how storytelling, music, and advertising come to life. He started his journey in production before rising through the ranks at one of the world's most renowned VFX houses. But instead of sticking to the traditional playbook, he co-founded a company designed for the future, one that challenges conventions, amplifies underrepresented voices, and operates entirely in the cloud. His work has earned BAFTA and Grammy nominations, and his studio is responsible for some of the most striking visuals in entertainment today. At the helm of Untold Studios, a creative powerhouse breaking boundaries across advertising, music, and film, he's redefining what's possible in the industry. Darren O'Kelly, welcome to Executive Insights, and thank you for making the time.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you, Tanuja.
Now, look, I might be dating myself a little bit here, but when I was preparing for this conversation, I thought back to the 1993 Jurassic Park. I actually do remember going to see it, which was hailed as one of the greatest VFX achievements of all time. You know, practical effects, CGI, working in perfect harmony. I wondered how you and the team at Untold Studios would have tackled a project like that today.
Oh, Jurassic Park. I mean, that was an absolute classic. For anybody who's worked in visual effects, it's one of those landmark moments, right? It's that coming together of extraordinary storytelling and technology. And I think, Spielberg at his very, very best. I remember watching it too. And I remember watching the glass of water vibrating and the kind of sense of kind of anticipation, right? What's going to happen? And then the T-Rex is revealed and you're like, oh my God, I've never seen anything quite so extraordinary before. And I think, that was that moment where the combination of extraordinary storytelling and technology came together. And Spielberg was able to make us believe that dinosaurs are real. Now, look, we're very fortunate today to get to work on some of the most incredible projects, especially projects that involve creating CGI creatures. If we were taking on a project like that today, as an example, the last Super Bowl, we ended up working on 5 spots. All of them had different creatures involved in them. And really what we're doing is bringing a kind of 2025 toolkit to the project, right? Which means the technology has evolved. It's evolved into extraordinarily different places, allowing us to achieve things in a different way. But what is absolutely enduring is storytelling and the craft of the artist to apply that technology to communicate great ideas. And I think that's really, I suppose, at the heart of everything that we're doing is like, how do you bring together brilliant storytelling, brilliant craft, and use next generation technology to make that utterly compelling.
I love that you actually bring together the storytelling part with all of the latest toolkit that you have available to you. You are doing something so very unique and different here, Darren, though. You're bringing obviously all of the creative genius that we've talked about. But I know when I think about the work we've been doing together, you are operating an entirely cloud-based creative studio, right? Next generation digital infrastructure. I remember you were able to launch, I think it was 6 weeks, far faster than any traditional setup that could be imagined. What was it that got you thinking, I'm not going to do it the traditional way?
There was a couple of things that kind of drove the thinking. I think almost to start a business in the first instance, there are often push and pull factors. The push factors are usually the kind of very basic question is, am I as excited about the next 10 years where I am as I was about the last 10 years? And if the answer is no, then you start thinking about whether you should do something different. But in truth, that's generally not enough to carry you across the line. You need pull factors. You need a belief that there's an opportunity to make a difference, to challenge the status quo, to do things in a completely different way. We live by a mantra, and it was certainly really important as we started out, like that we are 2/3 experience and 1/3 naivety. And I think in order to get started, right, you've got to have some experience, you've got to have some expertise, you've got to have some confidence in what you're doing. But the truth of it is that 1/3 naivety has been absolutely critical to some of the most foundational decisions we make. It's that ability to kind of, from a position of confidence, ask questions. Could we do something differently? Is there a different approach that we could take? It's that ability to look at the world with a kind of sense of childlike wonder. And actually, the reality for us was, one of the questions we asked of ourselves at the very beginning is, would it be possible to build an entirely cloud-based, high-fidelity creative studio from the get-go? We knew that people were, and we had been doing it ourselves, using the cloud for excess render, for certain kind of parts of the process, but nobody had contemplated taking that into a high fidelity, fully cloud-based creative studio. And exactly as you said, we ended up talking to the team at AWS and our tech team, and 6 weeks later, we had pioneered this kind of prototype, virtual studio, cloud native. And it was working. I've got to say, it was a little bit glitchy and there was things that didn't quite work. But, and I suppose we made that total commitment, which meant, necessity is the mother of all invention. Once you've decided this is the route we're going to go down, we were all committed to solving any of the obstacles that we had along the way. And there was these kind of, I remember when we opened, friends and peers would come into our studio and go, come on, show us where the machines really are. We don't believe you. So yeah, look, I think sometimes you've got to take brave decisions. You've got to ask yourself, could you do things in a different way? Is there a way to disrupt the way things have been done before in order to ultimately produce better work for your customers, be able to produce better experiences for your own team? And I think, that decision that we made around cloud-based technology was utterly foundational.
I love the point about childlike wonder, and this, the whole point about the why questions. Why is it done that way? Why cannot it be done this way? Why do our customers want that? What do they really need? And I think it's quite interesting because Andy, in his latest shareholders letter, writes about this capability of asking why questions. And he calls it the why quotient. And I actually think it really defines you so, so well. And, that working backwards from your customer, how do I improve that experience? And then bringing all of what you have to play. I mean, everything you've built in terms of artists, in terms of the creativity, in terms of the way you work, so that you can deliver this incredible experience.
Look, I think you're so right. And I think it's a bit about remembering to be unconventional. People often ask me about mistakes that you might have made along the way, and what have you got right, and what have you got wrong. And look, don't get me wrong, we got 1,000 things wrong along the way, but we solved all those things. I think the thing that I remember from that kind of very early stage, and I suppose it's really related to kind of that unconventional thinking, is that there was a real sense of optimism that we were on a mission, and we are on a mission to disrupt the status quo, to challenge the norms, to create an environment and a culture that wants to do the very best work that's possible out there. And I think, I mentioned that kind of 2/3 experience, 1/3 naivety. I think the other thing that we brought into our thinking right at that early stage was that, the two-way door kind of thinking. Yes. So that we understand that, what are foundational decisions. Cloud-based way of working is foundational for sure, but also what are decisions that we can walk away from? And so that we encourage ourselves to take chances, to try things, to create an environment that is different to the competitive set that might exist out there in terms of its approach to risk or to mistakes. And I think, I want us to remain utterly unconventional. And if that means that we have to and will continue to make some mistakes along the way, I'm pretty good with that.
It's so important, Darren. I'm so happy that you mentioned this, because I think sometimes people think it's luck, or I could never be that way. But actually, we've all stumbled a gazillion times, and had we not, we were probably not taking risk enough. And if you're not taking enough risk, you're likely not going to do anything amazing, are you? So I am curious, because this leadership style, this culture, this motivation, and this vision that you have, how do you cultivate that mindset within your leadership team, across the studio, new people joining you all of the time? How do you do that?
I think an awful lot of energy goes into culture and understanding what culture is, and understanding that it's dynamic, that leadership gets to play a part in defining what culture is, but also the full team contribute to what that is. I think, for me personally, I really believe in setting high standards. I really believe that we're trying to build a high performance team that has a shared vision and a shared sense of optimism about what we're going to do. I have this kind of, irrespective of the accolades that we've earned to date, I still believe our best work is in front of us. And I think, when you create an environment where everybody, cares about doing phenomenal work in and of the moment, but also knows that, we're striving for excellence, you kind of create an environment that, I suppose doesn't allow anybody to coast. It's not going to be that kind of space. It allows people to think about how to do the very best work of their lives. How do they concentrate on it? I suppose for me, in 20 years' time, I want, and I believe a lot of the people who worked at Untold will look back and go, that was the best moment of my career. That was a time where I got to work with other ridiculously talented people doing extraordinary work for extraordinary clients. And I worked in an environment that cared about the same two things that I care about, which is like doing brilliant, brilliant work with brilliant, brilliant people.
Listen, your team have worked with some of the most amazing artists and brands. Is there a dream collaboration that hasn't happened yet that you think about?
We're lucky enough to get to work with so many of the most influential artists and personalities in the world. We've recently worked with Oasis, with Adele, with Billie Eilish, with Stormzy, Florence Pugh, LeBron James. Lewis Capaldi was doing his comeback. We shot with him a couple of weeks ago. And actually, we never quite know where the next collab is going to come from or which artist is going to be in touch. So maybe not a collab, but in terms of things that I'd love us to be part of telling, like on a really personal level, I'm excited by kind of dynastic dramas, You might find it unusual as an Irishman, but I absolutely love The Crown, and we were fortunate enough to get to work on it, right?
Oh gosh, that was amazing. Now, didn't you earned a BAFTA and Emmy nomination for that work,
right.
didn't you? Congratulations.
Yeah, it was amazing to be part of it. We worked on 3 different seasons of it, bringing extraordinary shows, extraordinary moments in history to life. And it was a real joy to be part of it. And I think, I love shows like that. And on a kind of personal level, I think if they ever make the series that kind of tells the story of the Kennedys, that's the one. That's the one I'd love to be part of. I'd love us to be part of telling that. I think it's just such an extraordinary kind of period in history and an extraordinary family history. And I think that would be the one that might capture my attention.
Amazing. I do remember, and I think when we met actually at your studio, we were talking about that particular scene in The Crown. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
So we were invited to pitch for an episode on The Crown, which was retelling the story of the Aberfan tragedy, which is an extraordinary moment in British history. Over 100 children lost their lives that day. So, it was a story that we knew needed to be told sensitively, compassionately, but also dramatically. I remember going into the pitch, we were a complete outside bet, right? We were 6 weeks old, 7 weeks old. The executives came in, they met with us. I don't think they had any expectation that they were going to reward us. They were sort of giving us an opportunity. I think, pitching is humbling at any stage, but we always try to leave everything on the table, just express our creative point of view and perspective on how we can help aid and tell the story. And it was interesting. We talked less about the kind of technology that was going to be involved in telling that story, but gave confidence that we had the firepower, and that was largely through our cloud-based infrastructure, to deliver on the shots. And actually, one of the few questions we got asked during the pitch meeting was, how do I know you guys are going to be here in a year's time? And I thought to myself, that possibly means they're thinking about giving us the work, right?
Yes.
So, thankfully we were able to answer the question. But the project was about, really getting under the kind of geological aspects of a coal tip collapsing in the small mining village of Aberfan and the impact that had. And like everything that we end up doing, we end up becoming deep experts and researching things to extraordinary detail for a very short period of time so that we can then visualize that on screen to help communicate and tell the story. And it was a real privilege to be able to tell that story.
It's very beautiful and humbling, as you say, sensitively done. But it's wonderful how you bring together all of the aspects of what it takes to deliver something that amazing.
We hope you're enjoying this discussion. To join the conversation and engage with other business leaders on these topics, follow AWS Executive Insights on LinkedIn.
The industry is just evolving so fast, faster than ever. This shift with generative AI and what that can do as a technology, the impact that has on talent and how we cultivate talent and nurture talent and the new jobs of tomorrow. And I think the creative industry in particular is evolving very fast. I'd love to get your perspective. What about the change now excites you? What keeps you up at night?
I think there's an awful lot to be excited about. As I said earlier, I'm fundamentally an optimist. I believe in the future. I believe in the opportunities that we create, irrespective of how challenging particular periods can be. And I say that knowing that I started a company 7-8 years ago with a kind of a lens of saying we were building a company for the future. The truth of it is we had no idea what that future looked like, right? And the future ended up being quite different to what any of us thought of. But by being future focused, without being prescient about what that future looks like, you can end up making really good decisions. Again, when the pandemic happened, I think all companies were tested in ways that they hadn't imagined before. I think as a startup business, you only fully understand who you are and what you are when you've been tested in adversity. And we came of age during that period. We doubled in size for the next couple of years, simply because rather than being focused on how to repair legacy ways of working or how to protect market share or all those different things, we were actually focused on how do we do great work for our customers and how do we make that happen. And I think when you fast forward to today, there's obviously a really live conversation about the impact of AI
Yes.
on the creative industry. And I think that's a super exciting period for sure. But again, when we start trying to be prescient about the future with that, the reality is 2 years ago, the consumer products that people are talking about from an AI perspective didn't exist. So trying to figure out what 5, 7, 10 years looks like is probably not worth spending too much time on. What you can think about is what are the enduring principles? What are the things that are going to matter over time? And I think that is really about how you embrace technology, but also embrace the kind of fundamentals of creativity and storytelling. We've had copious amounts of machine learning and AI baked into our processes for 3 to 5 years already. It's probably important to make a distinction between what are consumer products and what are professional grade products. And I think all of the conversation that we're having right now in society really is around the impact that extraordinary consumer-facing products are having, both on creating content, but also on the ability to do things that could not have been done before. The reality in tandem to that is that we are using AI to accelerate creative processes and to support creative processes, but not removing the creativity of storytellers and artists. And I think that's, for time immemorial, the reality of it is that technology is an aid to extraordinary communication and storytelling. And I think that continues into the future.
I really love the way you define that, because I think you're right. There's this human creativity factor, and then there's everything you can do, not only with AI, as you say, with all of the infrastructure and services available, to be able to augment, accelerate, automate, simplify, right? And I guess also, what I love is also the innovation levels you can get to, right? I mean, some of the scenes we're talking about, being able to produce that just needs an incredible amount of technology and can take really long time. But today, that process can be so much fast forwarded, right? And then the cost, I guess, which is an important factor, right? I mean, all of those advantages sometimes get hidden when I think people worry about this takeover factor. And I'm with you. I'm very optimistic about the enablement and augmentation factor.
I think in a lot of what we do, we're sort of paid the last 20%, right? That's the bit that everybody notices. Does it look perfect, or does it look amazing, or is the story really resonating? Like, that's the bit that's difficult to do. The reality of it is anything that we can do to accelerate or augment the process prior to that is hugely helpful. And, I've been in this business for over 20 years, and the journey thus far has always been about how do you accelerate or augment those aspects of it. I think we're now at a moment where we've got the extraordinary opportunity to avail of new technology that allows us to push the barriers and boundaries even further. But I think we've got to hold on to the truth of story and communication and human connection. And I think, Aristotle got it right in the 4th century BC. The reality is we engage with the human condition. We engage in stories that have beginning, middles, and ends that we understand, that we empathize with. And since then, and when we go back to a film like Jurassic Park, or a commercial we've done in the last couple of weeks, or The Crown, or whatever it might be, technology has helped us tell those stories that might not have been possible before. But ultimately, we need to build human connection.
Darren, one of the things that I guess I'm thinking a little bit out loud here with you is that the way you've set up the business and the way that you're leveraging, this incredibly end-to-end technology-based, studio enables you also to access and collaborate with the most amazing talent around the world. And I'd love to get your sense of, whether that's true and how that's helping you, build an even more amazing business.
I think technology has enabled us to open up a global talent pool. And for me, I'm passionate about creating a company and a culture that is a destination for the very, very best talent in the world, and providing an environment for people to do the best work of their lives. We're about creating a culture of excellence, a culture that understands the work needs to be extraordinary. And I think the secret to that is about getting the small details right. Mm-hmm. Small details, big statements. And, even on a personal level, I'm sure my team think I'm kind of slightly bonkers, but I walk around all of our studios, right? And if I see something out of place, I fix it, I move it. If I see some mess on the floor, I fix it, I move it. And of course, I want the place to look good. That's part of it. But I think much more, it's about making the statement to our teams that small details matter. And I expect and I see my leadership team exhibit the same kind of attributes. And I also try to create an environment where my team are able to make decisions easily, that they're not waiting for my POV on it. Ultimately, my job, I think, is about removing the clutter that gets in the way of people doing great work. It's about creating the conditions for people to do the best work of their lives. At the end of the day, we're trying to make brilliant work for our customers, for our clients, and we need to liberate the people who are doing that work to do that in the most effective way possible and to enjoy their experience doing it.
So rather than being competitor obsessed, it really is about being customer obsessed, but backing that into a culture that really drives that bar or raises the bar. I think that's so, so important. And people love that. People want to come work, for others who feel the same way, right? And they're learning constantly.
I don't know how you stop halfway and say it's good enough. we work until it's as good as it can possibly be. There are many occasions where a client has said, we're really happy with the piece of work as it is. And we're saying, we're not quite ready yet. We want another couple of days to make sure it's absolutely perfect, because we hold ourselves to the very highest standard. We need to make the work as good as it can possibly be. There is no place for second best, for complacency, for anything else. And I think that is hugely attractive. If you are and aspire to be the very best in your field, you want to work with the very best people in your field, and you want to have the very best tools available to do that work. And you want to work in a culture that will be respectful, empathetic of all of your needs that go with that, but committed to making sure the work is extraordinary.
I know that you personally, are very invested in this whole mentorship culture. I understand that, you like to pair up actually your senior staff with your emerging creatives working side by side. Practically, how does that work?
Yeah, look, great question. I think we were a really young company when the pandemic happened. And I think when that happened, I think there was this kind of idea that all of a sudden the entry-level people joining businesses were not learning in the same way. They perhaps in a world where there's a lot more remote working, and the opportunities for people to develop their skill sets were removed. And I remember having the conversation with the senior team is, if historically there was an expectation that the more inexperienced people in the team would learn via osmosis, we need to shift. We need to shift and become teachers. We need to shift and become mentors, and we need to work with the talent to unlock the opportunities that they may have and unlock the potential that they have. And look, we have so many examples now of people who started in entry-level positions who are leading Super Bowl spots or part of leading Sonic 3 or whatever it might be, working on Mission Impossible, So we will back talent and we will support it. Operationally, how that looks is that I think we've got an extraordinary people team who think carefully about how they pair and mentor, particularly new joiners as they come into the business, and how that process works, so that there's kind of multiple touch points for them for a new joiner coming into the team. In terms of hiring, when we're bringing people into the business, I'm much more focused on what the team already is initially, and what will then stretch that. What is the competency and character that we need to bring in that will make that team stronger? We're a values-based business, and one of the values around our business is really important to us is around teamwork, around a belief in each other over and above the individual. And what that means is we're looking to bring in individuals who will add and stretch the culture and move us into a new place that will challenge and bring different opinion and different voice to the conversation, rather than kind of looking for bringing people in who will automatically agree with how we've done things already. And that's been really kind of refreshing. And I think as a company culture, we've embraced that fully. So there's a kind of an appetite to, when somebody new comes into the business, to kind of ask them, how have you done things before? How can we learn from it? What are the things that we can? And so that appetite to consistently improve and get better is just fundamentally part of our DNA. I think, Tanuja, one of the things that's been a helpful way to think about it is, look, there are obviously moral and ethical imperatives that should drive good behavior. The truth of it is that the more diverse, more diverse opinions, the more diverse voices you have in the business, the more successful the business is at a commercial and at a creative level.
I love it. Thank you so much, Darren O'Kelly. It's wonderful talking to you. Thank you for making the time. And I know our listeners are going to just really, really enjoy it. Lots of pragmatic tips and tricks.
Thank you, Tanuja. Real pleasure to join you today. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Executive Insights, brought to you by AWS. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by rating and reviewing. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.